On this episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive, I show you how to replace a oil filter housing gasket on a BMW E90 328i. What's going on, guys? If you saw my previous video, you know that I just bought a new daily driver, which is this E90 BMW. I'm really happy with the car, but I did know that there was at least one issue when I was buying it because I looked in the engine bay and I saw oil all around the oil filter housing, and I knew that that gasket kind of goes bad. So this is kind of a common issue with these cars. So hopefully this video is helpful to anyone who owns this car or has this engine. This is an N52 engine. Before we get started though, I wanted to cover a couple things that you're gonna need for this project that I wouldn't say are specialty, but they're not super common. So obviously the first thing you're gonna need is the gasket itself, and that is this guy. The part number is 11428637821, and I'll put that up in the video. So obviously you'll need that gasket. I found it for around $20 online, not too bad. Another thing that you're gonna need for this job is a 1/4 inch E10 torque socket, and that's going to make this job way easier. You will find an E10 in a 3/8 drive pretty common, but you won't find a 1/4 inch. So I had to buy this one off Amazon. I'll put the link in the description. It was like the only 1/4 inch E10 socket that I could find, but it should help massively with this job. Additionally, you're going to need a swivel, a 1/4 inch swivel, or universal joint, whatever you want to call it. That's going to make getting to one of these bolts on this housing that is pretty inaccessible, hopefully it's going to make it easier. And then you're going to need something that's going to be able to remove the cap on the oil filter. You know, BMWs have that cap. They sell special sockets for that kind of thing. I don't have one, and hopefully I'm going to get away with this. All right, now let's get to it. So here's obviously the oil filter housing, gasket, leaking crap everywhere. So the first thing that we're going to want to remove is this air box to give us some room to get this oil filter housing out of the way once we loosen these bolts. So to do that, there's two torque screws up here for this shroud thing, ram air induction, and then there's two I think they're 10 millimeter bolts on the end here that will remove the air box. So let's do that first. Two 10 millimeter bolts right here. And actually, looks like we're gonna have to remove the intake hose, which is just a, you'll just need a flat head because it's just a worm clamp. So I'm just gonna loosen this worm clamp. There we go. All right, that's one airbox removed. And look at all the room for activities. And just for funsies, I'm gonna stick a rag in here. I don't want anything falling in the intake and being ingested in the engine. That's never good, but all right, sweet. Now we have all this room right here. So let's see, next I'm gonna unplug whatever sensor this is, maybe like a coolant sensor. You just push in on this tong and pull back. All right. So now we can actually get to the job at hand. Remove the cap on this oil filter housing, and I want to do that just to, I'm not going to remove it fully, but I'm just going to kind of vent it and hope that all the oil drains out of there and into the engine so we don't make a huge mess once we inevitably pull this oil filter housing off. So now we're going to remove these bolts, and this is where you're going to need your socket that you hopefully purchased ahead of time. Go ahead and remove this one. I'm going to try and keep these in some sort of an order because I do believe they're different lengths. So that's a pretty long one. So sometimes what I do when I remove fasteners that are different lengths and are specific, I'll just get like some cardboard, cut it out and kind of the shape that I want to, and then draw on it accordingly so I can keep track. So now I actually put 4 holes in here, but I think there's only 3 bolts. But now I can put the bolt that I just pulled out of here in the top left, so I know where that goes when it comes time to put these back in. So fun little tidbit that should help you out. So we got this one out. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so here's where some of these, this universal swivel is gonna hopefully be a huge help. So one of the bolts is under this intake manifold, and I think the service manual actually wants you to take off the intake manifold, but I really don't want to do that. So I'm gonna try and finagle this. So this is a 1/4" E10 socket on a 1/4" universal swivel, 1/4" extension. This is getting really convoluted, to a 3/8 adapter because I didn't have another 1/4" extension to a 3/8 extension. So yeah, that was a mouthful, but I needed some extra length here. Doesn't everyone? And hopefully with any luck, yeah, we can break that guy loose. Okay, finally got it free. Now we make sure we don't drop it. Voila. Okay, let's get our handy little template here. Like I said, I thought there were 4 bolts, but I think there's only 3. So this is the bottom right. Once again, looking at this. So now we got one more down here. All right, guys, sorry about that. I had to break away for a second. So I thought this bolt was going to be the hardest one, but for me, it was this one because I don't have like a swivel socket. I just have a socket and a universal swivel. And what happens is it's too long and it interferes with this hose here. So I kind of had to do some finagling, but I finally broke this loose. Before I go ahead and pull this out, there's gonna be coolant that comes out and maybe a little bit of oil. So I'm just gonna jam some towels wherever I can. Yeah, I should be able to do the rest of this by hand. Okay, so final bolt. Back to our cardboard. And yep, they're all 3 different lengths, so keep that in mind. So, and that bolt was like covered in oil and stuff, so obviously it had been leaking pretty good there. So I'm gonna get another towel, if I have one. And let's go ahead and unveil this. And yep, that is a pretty Parish gasket. So I'm just gonna kind of place this right here. What I'm gonna do first is try and wipe this mating surface down to get majority of the crap. Being careful to avoid as much as possible getting these debris in these different orifices, because that's obviously going into the engine. So I'm just going to clean this surface, and like I said, get as much of the big stuff off first. All right, so as you can see, we did a pretty decent job getting the surface clean, but it's not as clean as it could be. So I'm gonna take a little brake clean. This is a sponge, but it's got like, I don't know, Scotch-Brite on the back. And I'm just gonna rub away at what's left of this gasket and get this surface nice and clean, so we have a clean mating surface when we put the new gasket on. All right, as you can probably see, I've cleaned off this mating surface. Now it's time to get this gasket out of the oil filter housing. And I don't have a pick, which is something I should have, but I'm going to try and use a screwdriver here. There we go. Yank this sucker out, and like, obviously you won't be able to tell in the video, but I can tell you that this gasket feels very hard, not like soft like a gasket like this would. And actually this corner over here, I just noticed is kind of messed up. And then now we need to clean up this surface. So I'm gonna go through here and just take a rag, maybe some brake clean, and clean this surface where the new gasket's gonna go. All right guys, I spent a lot of time off camera cleaning up this surface, cleaning up that surface. This looks like a murder scene or something. Rags everywhere, but it's finally time to put this gasket in the oil filter housing. So it's a pretty unique shape. So there's really obviously only one way you could put it in, but match it up. Now that that's pressed in there, I grabbed one of the bolts that we need to put back in. And let me put my rag down here in case we spill any more. And I'm just going to start this one. And I'm just gonna snug this first one up because these other holes might not line up, so I'm just gonna snug it up a little bit that it could still move around, but it's at least on there. Once again, still got my cardboard, and I'm gonna move to this bottom one. Now we need to get our crazy contraption out here to reach that back bolt. Swivel, all sorts of extensions. And hopefully we don't drop it. This is like finger yoga. Oh, I hate you. Okay, all of these are threaded in a little bit before I snug them and I forget. I'm gonna reattach this sensor, which I believe is some sort of coolant sensor. So that guy's on. Now time to snug each of these guys up. Click. And one more. Okay. All these bolts are on. Let's also snug up this guy. Since we loosened him to drain out the oil. All right, he's snugged up. Our gasket is replaced, the thing that we really wanted to do. We just have a couple more things to reattach. So let's take this rag out, because the engines don't like to suck in rags, and put the airbox in. All right, the hose is on. I'm going to reconnect the MAF. And then make sure you tighten down that worm clamp on the intake hose. Okay, so we tighten that worm clamp up. Now let's get those bolts that hold the airbox down. Go ahead and drop that. Let's put these guys in. Snug these down. Snugged up. One final piece. Get those screws from before. All right, and that completes it. What I'm gonna do before I start the car is wash this engine bay down, and I have a video for how to do that, how to clean engine bays cheaply, so check that one out. But I'm gonna wash this engine bay so I can get all the oil and coolant out of here. So if you do have a leak, you know it's a new leak and it's not the leak that you just fixed. But we got the air box back in, the MAF is connected, the coolant temperature sensor is connected, and all these bolts are torqued down, so we are good to go. Well, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found this video helpful and it'll save you some money. I know the dealership charges around $500 or $600 for this job, and this is something that you can do in an hour if you're efficient with a couple specialty tools. Save you some money, all that stuff. But we appreciate you guys watching as always. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it and you want to see more, and we will catch you next time.